I was 65 years old when my only daughter tried to humiliate me in front of our entire family over $500. The evening was supposed to be a celebration. My grandson Leo had just graduated from high school, and we were gathered in a private dining room at a nice local restaurant. I sat near the end of the table, enjoying my roasted chicken and watching Leo laugh with his cousins. Then, my daughter Vanessa stood up. She slammed her hand against the wooden table so hard the silverware rattled. The conversation stopped immediately. $500 is missing, she shouted, scanning the room with wide, frantic eyes. I had an envelope with $500 in cash for Leo's college fund in my purse. Now it's gone. Nobody leaves this room. My son-in-law Greg frowned and stood up beside her. Vanessa, are you sure? Maybe it fell out in the car. I am absolutely sure, Vanessa snapped. She didn't look at Greg. She didn't look at Leo. She looked directly at me. Someone at this table took it while I was getting the cake ready. The room went completely silent. Everyone stared at her, confused and uncomfortable. I didn't panic. I just picked up my water glass and took a slow sip. I knew exactly what she was doing. I had noticed her acting strange all evening, hovering near my chair whenever I got up to use the restroom or take a photo with Leo. Vanessa pointed her finger straight at my chest. Empty your pockets, Mom. A collective gasp echoed around the table. Leo's face flushed bright red. Mom, what are you doing? Grandma wouldn't steal anything. We'll see about that, Vanessa demanded. If you have nothing to hide, Mom, open your purse and empty your jacket pockets right now. I placed my glass down carefully. I didn't yell and I didn't defend myself. I just looked at her, realizing she had finally crossed a line she could never uncross. To understand why Vanessa was doing this, you need to know how we were living. 5 years ago, after my husband passed away, I found myself alone in a large 4-bedroom house. Vanessa and Greg were struggling to pay rent at their cramped apartment. They approached me with a proposal they would move into the main house to take care of me in my old age, and I could move into the detached mother-in-law cottage in the backyard. I agreed. I wanted to help my family. But within a year, the reality of their plan became very clear. They weren't taking care of me. I was subsidizing their lifestyle. I paid the property taxes. I paid the utility bills for the entire property. I bought the groceries. Meanwhile, Vanessa treated me like a built-in maid. She would leave piles of Greg's dirty laundry on my porch, expecting me to wash them. She would demand I babysit Leo at the drop of a hat, even though he was a teenager, and didn't need a sitter just so she could go out drinking with her friends. I tolerated it longer than I should have, mostly because I wanted to stay close to Leo. But last week, everything shifted. I came home from the grocery store early and found Vanessa inside my cottage. She didn't hear me walk in. I stood in the hallway and watched her rummage through my desk drawers, specifically looking through my bank statements and pension paperwork. I didn't confront her right then. I just stepped back outside, closed the front door loudly, and pretended I had just arrived. She quickly walked out of the bedroom, offering a weak excuse about looking for a pen. That afternoon, I realized my daughter didn't just want free rent. She was looking for a way to take total control of my finances. I knew I had to take action immediately, long before we ever sat down for this graduation dinner. Back in the restaurant, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Vanessa stood at the head of the table, waiting for me to comply with her outrageous demand. Greg crossed his arms, looking somewhat embarrassed, but doing absolutely nothing to stop his wife. Mom, I am waiting, Vanessa insisted. Turn out your pockets. I looked around the table. My nieces and nephews were staring at their plates, clearly wishing they were anywhere else. Leo looked completely devastated. This was supposed to be his special night, and his mother was turning it into a circus. Are you sure you want to do this, Vanessa? I asked quietly. I want my money back, she replied. her voice cold. I didn't argue. Arguing with Vanessa only ever gave her the fuel she wanted. I slowly unzipped my black leather handbag and placed it on the table. I pushed it toward her. Go ahead. Look. Vanessa's eyes lit up with a disturbing kind of excitement. She practically lunged at the bag. She dug her hands inside, pushing aside my reading glasses, my wallet, and my keys. Within seconds, her fingers closed around a thick white envelope tucked into the side pocket. She pulled it out and held it up high for everyone to see. I knew it, she declared triumphantly. She ripped the envelope open and pulled out 5 crisp $100 bills. Look at this, everyone. $500. Exactly what went missing. Greg stepped forward, his eyes widening. Vanessa, maybe she just brought cash for Leo's gift. No, Vanessa countered quickly. This is the exact envelope I got from the bank yesterday. It even has the teller's initial on the corner. My own mother stole from me. She looked at me, a victorious smirk playing on her lips. She thought she had won. She had no idea the trap was actually closing on her. Vanessa waved the money in the air like a trophy. You stole from your own family. I can't believe it. I remained perfectly still in my chair. I didn't take your money, Vanessa. Then how did it get in your purse? She challenged, leaning over the table. Before I could answer, she launched into the speech I realized she had prepared beforehand. You need help, Mom. You've been getting so forgetful lately. Last week, you left the stove on. You're confused. Greg and I have been talking about this for months. You shouldn't be living alone in the cottage anymore. It's not safe. I stared at her. I had never left a stove on in my life. Greg's parents are losing their lease next month. Vanessa continued, her voice dripping with fake concern. They can move into the cottage and you can move into the spare room in the main house. We need to take over your finances, Mom, for your own protection. You clearly can't manage on your own if you're stealing cash and forgetting about it. There it was. The real motive laid bare for everyone to see. Greg's parents needed a place to live, and Vanessa wanted my cottage. More importantly, she wanted a reason to declare me incompetent so she could get her hands on my pension and savings accounts. She staged this entire theft to make me look like a confused, declining old woman in front of the whole family. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just watched her perform. She expected me to break down, to plead, to act like a frightened victim. I refused to give her that satisfaction. Before I could even open my mouth to respond, the person Vanessa least expected to intervene finally had enough. Leo stood up. The heavy wooden chair scraped loudly against the floor, breaking the tense silence in the room. He was 18 tall and broad-shouldered, and the look on his face was one of pure disgust. "Put the money down," Mom Leo demanded. Vanessa blinked, clearly thrown off balance. "Leo, honey, stay out of this. This is for your own good. Your grandmother is sick. I said put it down." Leo interrupted, his voice dropping an octave. He walked around the table until he was standing directly between me and his mother. "Leo, she stole your college money." Greg tried to reason with him. Leo ignored his father. He looked dead into his mother's eyes. "I saw you." Vanessa froze. "Saw me what I saw," Leo repeated, pointing at the white envelope. "I was coming back from the restroom while Grandma was taking pictures with Aunt Linda. I stood by the door and watched you slip that envelope into Grandma's purse." The color drained from Vanessa's face so fast, she looked like she might faint. Her jaw dropped, but no sound came out. The victorious smirk vanished, replaced by sheer panic. "You planted it there?" Leo continued, not breaking eye contact with her. "You tried to set her up." The silence in the private dining room was deafening. My nieces and nephews stared at Vanessa in horror. Greg stepped back from his wife as if she had suddenly caught fire. Her grand, manipulative plan had crumbled in a matter of seconds, destroyed by a single sentence from her own son. Vanessa swallowed hard, her hands shaking. But my response was going to be much louder than her silence. Vanessa began to stammer desperately, trying to invent a way out. Leo, you're confused. The lighting in here is terrible. I was just moving her purse so it wouldn't fall. Leo shook his head, looking completely repulsed. Stop lying, Mom. Just stop. I decided it was time to end the show. I stood up slowly and smoothed the front of my dress. I reached into the interior pocket of my blazer, not my purse, and pulled out a crisp, sealed, blue envelope. I handed it to Leo. Happy graduation, sweetheart. That's your actual gift from me. Use it for your textbooks. Leo took it, his eyes softening when he looked at me. Thanks, Grandma. I turned my attention back to Vanessa. She was clutching the edge of the table, looking everywhere but at me. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you hovering around my chair all night? I asked calmly. Or that I wouldn't notice you digging through my desk drawers last Tuesday? Vanessa flinched. Greg looked at her sharply. You were digging through her desk. I was looking for a pen, Vanessa squeaked. You were looking at my bank statements, I corrected her. You thought you could manufacture a crisis tonight, humiliate me in front of the family and use it as an excuse to declare me unfit. You wanted the cottage for Greg's parents, and you wanted control of my money. Vanessa tried to force out an apology, claiming she was just stressed about finances, but I held up a hand. I was completely done playing the understanding mother. It was time to show her exactly who had the real power. Let's make one thing perfectly clear. I stated keeping my voice even and measured. I am not forgetful, I am not confused, and I certainly don't need your supervision. Greg tried to step in, playing the peacemaker as always. Mom, let's just calm down. This is a misunderstanding. Vanessa has been under a lot of pressure at work. I didn't even look at him. There is no misunderstanding, Greg. And I am perfectly calm. I looked back at my daughter. Since you are so concerned about finances, Vanessa, you should know that I visited the bank this morning. Vanessa's eyes darted nervously. What do you mean? Years ago, I put your name on my primary checking account in case of an emergency, I explained. This morning, I sat down with a very helpful teller and had your name completely removed. You are no longer an authorized user. You have zero access to my money. Vanessa gasped, her hands flying to her chest. You can't do that. My gym membership and the streaming services are attached to that account. Not anymore, I replied flatly. The bank has issued me new debit and credit cards. Your auto drafts will bounce next week. Greg rubbed his face, realizing the severity of the situation. Mom, please. We rely on that account for a few minor things. You are adults, I reminded them. Pay for your own minor things. And that's not the only change I made today. I reached into my pocket again and pulled out a shiny new brass key, setting it down on the table with a firm click. Vanessa stared at the new key on the table. What is that? That is the new key to the cottage, I told her. I had a locksmith come out yesterday afternoon. The spare key you kept on your kitchen counter will no longer work. Do not attempt to enter my home again without my explicit permission. Vanessa's face went from pale to a deep, angry red. You're locking your own daughter out. I am locking a thief out, I corrected her. Since you like throwing that word around. Before she could argue, I delivered the final piece of my preparation. Furthermore, I said, looking at both Vanessa and Greg, I have logged into all my utility portals. I canceled the autopay for the main house's electricity, water, and internet. The bills are now entirely your responsibility. Greg practically choked. Mom, wait. We can't afford all those utilities right now. Property taxes are due in 2 months. Then you need to budget better, I replied coldly. You both work full-time jobs. You've lived rent-free in my house for 5 years. Starting on the first of the month, you will also be taking over the property tax payments. If you can't afford to live in the main house, I suggest you pack your things and find an apartment you can afford. Vanessa started to cry real tears, this time born of frustration and lost control. How can you do this to us? To your family? Family doesn't plant stolen money in a purse to declare their mother incompetent, I answered. I picked up my handbag and slung it over my shoulder. The dinner was completely ruined, but standing there looking at the stunned faces of the people who thought they could use me. I had never felt more liberated in my entire life. Vanessa tried to play the victim one last time. She reached out trying to grab my arm. Mom, please. We can talk about this. Don't just walk out. I stepped back easily, avoiding her grasp. We have nothing left to talk about, Vanessa. The arrangement is over. You will pay your own way, or you will leave my property. I turned away from her and looked at Leo. He was still standing there holding the blue envelope I had given him. He looked sad, but he didn't look surprised. He knew exactly who his parents were. I'm very proud of you, Leo, I told him, my voice softening. I'm sorry your dinner turned out this way. Call me tomorrow, okay? Leo nodded. He walked over, wrapped his arms around me, and gave me a tight hug right in front of his mother. I will, Grandma. Drive safe. I turned on my heel and walked toward the door of the private dining room. I didn't look back. I didn't wait to hear Vanessa's excuses, and I didn't stick around to listen to Greg complain about the bills. I left them standing there in their own mess, completely exposed in front of our relatives. I also left them with the check for the expensive graduation dinner they had insisted on booking. When I walked out into the cool evening air, I took a deep breath. I didn't feel heartbroken. I didn't feel like a victim. Driving home alone, pulling into the driveway, and walking toward the cottage, the space felt entirely different. For the first time in 5 years, it finally felt like it belonged to me. 3 months have passed since that disastrous graduation dinner. I am sitting on the porch of my cottage, enjoying my morning coffee in total peace. The air is crisp, and for the first time in years, the silence around my home isn't heavy with tension. It's wonderfully comforting. Things at the main house have changed drastically, without my financial support cushioning their bad decisions. Vanessa and Greg quickly realized they couldn't afford their lifestyle. They certainly couldn't afford to move Greg's parents into the cottage like they had secretly planned. Instead, they were forced to take in 2 loud, messy roommates just to cover the basic utility bills and property taxes I had quietly stopped paying for. I sometimes see Vanessa hauling extra trash bags to the curb or arguing over parking spaces, looking absolutely exhausted. Vanessa tried to visit me a few times during that first month. She would show up at my front door holding cheap grocery store pastries, fully equipped with fake tears and empty apologies about how things simply got out of hand. I never opened the door. I simply spoke to her through the Ring camera, telling her I was busy and ending the conversation with the press of a button. I refused to let her back into my physical or mental space. I didn't need to hire an expensive lawyer. I didn't need to call the police or launch a messy family feud. I just needed to close my checkbook, change my locks, and strictly enforce my boundaries. Leo visits me every Sunday for lunch. He moved out of the main house shortly after the dinner and into a small, affordable apartment near his community college. I send him home with leftovers, and he helps me tend to my garden. We have a wonderful relationship away from his mother's toxic influence, built on actual respect rather than manipulation. If there is one crucial lesson I want to share with anyone listening to this, it's this. Sometimes parents think they have to endure anything just because it's family. We are conditioned to absorb disrespect, gaslighting, and financial abuse just to keep a fragile peace under our own roofs. But you cannot heal a toxic dynamic by continuing to fund it. Family ties should never require you to sacrifice your dignity or your financial security. I realized that night that I didn't lose a daughter. I just finally stopped being a victim to one. Setting strict boundaries doesn't make you a bad mother. It makes you a strong, self-respecting adult. I am 65 years old. My money is secure, my doors are locked, and my life is finally my own. And honestly, it feels like it's just beginning. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. If you've ever had to draw a hard line with an entitled or toxic family member to protect your own peace, please share your experience in the comments below. Your story might just give someone else the courage they need. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next upload. Stay strong, and remember, it is never too late to take your life back.